An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6, Chapter 93, The Magic of Old Valyria. His bones and joints ached, but Aemon Targaryen couldn't be bothered to care. 7 hells, he didn't even feel the pain. Not at least that kind of pain. Age hobbling even in his sleep, the light doze that consumed him in his simple bed in the Red Keep suddenly vanished. Evaporated into thin air as he bolted upright. Sweat soaking him, pallor the colour of pure chalk, eyes bloodshot. And the pain. Agonizing pain. As if he had taken triple the stabs that his own great-nephew endured at the wall, ramming into his very soul at the speed of the fastest gale. Over and over again. Crushing him, draining him of energy. It was a miracle that he was able to stagger out of bed to his cane, hauling himself up and out of the hallway. For his gasps and groans, well honed of a man who had learnt the self-control of the dragon lords of old, were nothing in comparison to the pitched screams that rocked the Red Keep that night. Aemon knew. Oh, did he know? Cane smacking against the stone below. He slowly made his way down the deserted corridor of the outer familiar chambers into Maegor's holdfast. It was dark. The hallways and corridors winding, King Maegor building them well, to confuse assassins and faith militant trying to assault the royal family. But Aemon, even in his pain, knew them like the back of his hand. Not blindness itself could take away his childhood of exploring these halls every day with his brother Aegon, and those moments proved fruitful even now, as he approached a century upon the earth. A quarter of the imperial family were in a madhouse, screams and cries deafening Aemon's ears. He could make out scurrying chambermaids dashing around without direction. Confused and disorientated. What is all this? He knew, but asked anyway. Words ground out between clenched teeth. A maid, upon seeing him, bowed low. Their graces, the prince and princesses! They are in great pain, my lord. Aemon pushed his way to the nursery, only to find a heartbreaking scene. Crown Prince Rhaegar and Princess Arya were on the Crown Prince's bed, wrapped together in tears. Arya's screams shook the rafters, face drenched and buried in her brother's shirt, while Rhaegar sobbed uncontrollably. Both had their direwolves, Eddie and Shadow, nestled close to them in a form of comfort. Though comfort was lacking for the twins. Dothraki nursemaids hovered over them, but when one would get the urge to try and comfort them, their young direwolves would bark and growl menacingly. The pain was a pain for the Targaryen twins to bear alone. Close to the infant Princess Saera's crib, the baby's pierced wails did their best to top her sister's. Her chubby face was a bright purple in sheer agony, screaming like mad in spite of all the efforts of the harried Catelyn Stark rocking her in his arms. Beside the cries of the young Jon Stark were softer, more of irritation at the noise and at the pain of his cousins than what the Targaryens felt. Olenna's rusty maternal instincts were enough. Catelyn noticed him first. Aemon! In the name of the Seven, what is happening? These 3 just started screaming! Out of nowhere! Olenna barked, though more out of a terrified sadness than irritation. What in the mother is going on? Aemon knew. It had happened before. To him when the entire Targaryen family either died or was exiled following Robert's rebellion. Each dragon, dead, felt like a pain to the gut to him at the wall. But this was worse. So much worse. Death was one thing, but the level of pure agony was something else. Something so malevolent and evil that polluted the dragon bloodline. It tore. It burned. It ripped apart their very souls. But it wasn't Aemon that voiced this. It was a newcomer. It is the Emperor and Empress, Kinvara stated flatly, just arriving. A grim realization was displayed on her face. They have lost. Baby in hand, Aemon eased himself onto the bed. The twins immediately threw their arms around him. Mona! Papa! Rhaegar sobbed. They can't be! They just can't! Arya cried before another wave of pain slammed into her soul. Aemon just hugged them all close, allowing his own tears to fall. Line break. Arya lost count of how long she was clutched onto Jon's body, praying to every god she knew to bring him back to her, to bring Daenerys back to all of them, to save her from the malevolence that had consumed the kind empress and a member of her pack. For her and Gendry's babe nestled inside her womb to be able to know his or her aunt and uncle. Anger burned within the Lady Baratheon at the Night King, cursing all existence for her failure to deliver the killing blow. And underneath was fear. Fear that nothing could stop that monster. Leif had told her of the past, of the first long night as she laid to rest her lover. Only the sword of the Lightbringer, awash in the bright flame of dragon blood, can bring him down. Only the magic of light can defeat the magic of darkness. And their Lightbringer was dead upon the snow. Gone. Why? Gods, why? Who goes there? A gruff voice said Arya, leaping up within seconds, cat's paw drawn while Ghost growled at the new threat. The man merely filtered in slowly through the snowdrifts, as Arya recognised the accent as a northern one. A familiar northern one. Lord Reed? Behind her, Rhaegal, the great dragon despondent, only knocked out of his torpor to nudge Jon's body with his snout, begging him to wake, roared like a demon. Arya held up her hands frantically. No! Lord Reed is our friend! Rhaegal, stop! Thankfully, the dragon backed down, heeding Arya's warning. He could smell the blood of his rider in the tiny girl, and with the pain of his mother and father's death came a savage urge to protect the last living connection to them. Hooting angrily, he curled up in a ball. Quiet, whimpering gruffly, as if sobbing. Howland Reed emerged from behind the snowdrifts, the surviving Cranog men behind him. It had been hours before they emerged from the safety of Last Hearth food cellar, giving the dead a long time to evacuate from the region. A lookout spotted the Emperor's dragon by the godswood, and here they were. His beady yet friendly eyes widened. By the gods, what happened? As each of his men came upon the scene, horror crossed their expressions. Arya collapsed onto her knees, cradling her brother's head in her arms once more. The Night King, was her only answer before the sobs returned. Eyes closing shut, Howland fought the tears himself, looking upon the poor boy taken from the earth before his time. Long before his time. I'm sorry, Lyanna. Dozens of Cranog men had taken Jon to the foot of the weirwood tree, collecting enough rocks and snow to rest Jon on, to give him some form of dais to rest in his eternal sleep. They could not stay here, not with the army of the dead bearing down upon them, but they could at least pay tribute to their ruler, a son of the North, blood of the first men, having coursed through his veins beside that of the dragon. The survivors gathered in a circle, all falling to their knees before Jon, Arya at the centre. A group of men that had pipes stashed in their sacks began up a tune, one familiar to Arya as her own name. It was a tune known to all of the North, to all those with the blood of the first men, even the free folk and the giants. A song of remembrance, of pain in the death of loved ones, sung at funerals, telling a tale of a warrior having died fighting a battle long forgotten. A tune that drove even the most hardened, emotionless psychopath to tears. With the Lord of Greywater Watch stepping forward, Arya felt her eyes cloud with tears. Lord Brandon took to the field, with his men as hard as steel, and we drove the bloody demons to the sea. Before the blades had stilled, there were many hundreds killed. There's many a beautiful lass sad tonight. Gathered among the kneeling Cranog men, Arya was speechless. The weathered lord, hair sprinkled salt and pepper, and of squat stature. His voice wafted through the air like a gentle breeze, mournful and beautiful at the same time, delivering an honor to the fallen emperor unlike any other. Ghosts howled, pierced the air as a fitting chorus. And it's ale in the morning, ale in the night. Another o'er brothers has laid down his final watch. We'll toast him till we're drunk, boys, and douse the candlelight. And tell them Lord Brandon is coming home tonight. When Howland Reed sang, even the winds died down to listen. Line break. Open for the Lord! At the van of the detachment of Stark household guards, Robb didn't feel the same sense of relief that he normally did when returning to his home. The keep under his control. Too much was on his mind, especially as he saw Balerion sprawled in the snow, barely moving. His dragon sense wasn't up to the standard of his brother or niece and nephew, but Robb could have sworn that the dragon was in a state of depression. Riella and Leoneris were both hooting at their older brother, but eventually squawked and flew off into the sky, where there was no response. Where is Rhaegal? Where are Edaron and Sansenya? It gave him a sickening feeling. 6 dragons chased the Night King into the clouds, while only 3 remained. Robb! His dark musings evaporated at seeing his wife scrambling down the steps towards him. The Lord of Winterfell quickly dismounted his horse, throwing propriety to the wind. With ice monsters and an army of corpses bearing down upon the world, Robb couldn't be bothered to care. And lifting Marjorie into the air as soon as she embraced him, tears fell down her cheeks, but she was smiling. I was worried I'd lose you. He kissed her, happy to at least he could find comfort in her arms. I've survived worse. He didn't deserve her, but somehow the gods had been kind to him to give him a second chance. Has Daenerys arrived? Jon? Robb felt her stiffen in his arms. What's wrong? Once he set her upon the ground, Marjorie glanced towards the keep. There's a war council session gathered in the war room. We are waiting for you to return to begin. Worry clouding his face, Robb took her arm, allowing his wife to lead him to the meeting. Not having bothered to take off his cloak or sword belt, Robb found the entirety of the Imperial leadership clustered around the map table in the Winterfell war room, having quite a lot of use as of late, war consuming the north after centuries of dormancy. Jon Royce and the Vale Lords, the Dothraki Bloodriders, and Baelor Hightower of the Reach were all clean and well kept as can be, while Robb, Jaime, Lyle Craycall, Grey Worm, Podrick, Gendry, Tormund, and the other commanders from Last Hearth sported the bandages and grime-stained garb of the battle, not having time to change. One thing that Robb noticed immediately was that Jon and Dany were not present, Arya conspicuously absent as well. Sansa and Tyrion stood at the head of the table, Bran behind them, his brother silent and emotionless. Cor Chono and Alyscar Stark both made room for Robb and Marjorie across from the two hands. Forgive me for my absence until now, my lords and ladies, the Warden of the North said flatly. Glad you can make it, Lord Stark, Tyrion replied. We are going over casualty estimates. I know. I was there, Lord Tyrion. About 10,000 of their force of 6 times that number had fallen in front of the castle of House Umber. 10,000 brave men now meet in the Night King's army. But such was unstated at the cost of their plan. Wildling Wargs and Tormund's employ had estimated they had inflicted a 7-to-1 kill ratio. Not too shabby. But Jon and Dany were missing, and had failed to kill the Night King. Robb didn't know if they could hold out, especially without... Where are the Emperor and Empress? A sense of hesitation to bring up the subject until they were all in the council, and many not on the council, were here descended into pandemonium as nearly a dozen lords voiced their concerns and demands of answers. There are only 3 dragons, Lyanna Mormont hissed. I am uncomfortable proceeding without their majesties, Jon Royce complained. Emperor and Empress must be here, Grey Worm ground out. This is all a fucking joke, Bronn snarled. I didn't risk my wife and my castle for this war just so they could dick around when we fucking need them. Hold your tongue, Lord Bronn, hissed young Rickon.
Arya is missing too, Gendry stated, fear and anger tinging his voice. Last I saw her was racing off with the hound. We need to form a search party, Tormund worried for his friend. Comb everywhere between here and Last Hearth. The last thing we need is to allow those corpses to take out another part of our army, Lyle Crakehall shot back. Sansa, feeling the headache she had shared with Marjorie, Tyrion and Missandei for weeks. My lords and ladies, please calm down. She began to only be drowned out as they kept bickering and yelling at each other. Nodding at Brienne, the female knight effected her lady's orders by slamming her mailed fist into the ironwood table, smack echoing in the windowless hall. After several moments, silence reigned. Thank you. We are not savages. There will be order. I agree with Lord Stark and Commander Grey Worm. The absence of their majesties is the most pressing concern we have now. The construction of their defences was proceeding as scheduled, and the men knew what they had to do. They are likely alone, unable to have left with the army. Those dragons won't leave the side of their majesties. The Strongbow had fought against the Targaryens and alongside them. He picked up several things about the dragons. I find it hard to believe that the Black Dread Reborn would abandon her majesty amongst those monsters.
You don't know that, Lord Crakehall. The Night King's power nearly killed Rhaegal in the past. She could have begged him to flee lest he die. Sansa's explanation seemed plausible to the lords. Now, I have discussed this with Lord Tyrion and Lady Stark, and feel Tormund's suggestion for a search party to find the Emperor and Empress. Jon is dead. One could hear a sewing needle drop onto the wooden floor after Bran spoke. There seemed to be no emotion in his voice, but those that knew him closely could hear the slight grief amongst his words.
What?
It fell to Davos to break the silence. The Night King killed him, ran him through with Longclaw. Bran was the voice of truth for those present. For those sceptical, the grimace adorning the Lady Melisandre's face only confirmed it. Jaime gaped. Tyrion's wineglass toppled to the floor as he coughed out the sour liquid. Sansa felt as if it was her that was stabbed through the heart. Robb staggered as if hit. Davos paled. Sam felt as if he were about to faint. Around the table, the reaction from the lords and ladies of Westeros was similar. "You're lying!" screamed Rickon. He had grown into a strapping young man of 14, but was still young and in want of maturity. "Jon can't die!"
"He died once before."
Robb trailed off, forced to lean against a wooden column for support.
"And no Melisandre was with him this time." "I'm so sorry, brother,"
Bran said, his voice cracking, a sign that the real Bran Stark was in there. Rickon shook his head, soft sobs racking his body as he covered his face with his hands. Looking at each of the lords, most with shoulders sagging and sorrow on their faces, for those that Jon knew personally, his friends and family, the pain and anguish was evident. But there is worse. Hand over her heart, Sansa felt herself snap into anger. "How can it be worse, Bran? Our brother, our emperor, is dead!" Podrick moved to embrace her, and Sansa just collapsed into him. No one said anything. Each man and woman at the table wishing they could seek the comfort of their loved ones. For those like Robb and Marjorie or Missandei and Grey Worm, they already were. His death was a mercy. All eyes flickered to Melisandre. The Red Witch bore a similar expression to Bran, but there was a dejection rather than sadness. As if all she knew had collapsed around her. The Lord of Light took mercy on him with this death, allowing him peace in death, unlike the promised princess. Murmurs and worried glances were interrupted when Ser Jorah rose, white as a sheet and fists clenched by his side. "What did you say?" He slowly stalked towards the Red Woman, his expression shifting between anger and agony. "What about Daenerys?" Before she could respond, the former Lord of Bear Island grabbed her by the shoulders, shaking her violently. "Answer me, damn you!" "Ser Jorah!" Lyanna Mormont yelled out. "Stand down!" But no one could calm the Bear Knight, except the one who had answers. She was wanted by the Night King. he stilled, his and all ears listening to Bran with reverence. The Night King was once a Stark. The first Stark. He fell in love with the sister of the first Targaryen, also named Daenerys. The tragic story of the first union of ice and fire brought awe and tears to even the strongest among them. But it was Grey Worm that pierced the tragedy spun by Bran. What happened to Empress Daenerys? Dark magic. Ice seemed to drape over the war room. The same dark magic they used to create the Night King. He used on Daenerys to create the Night Queen. They march upon us. The council was at its breaking point. Even Lyle Craycall and Grey Worm about to collapse from fear and pain. There are things worse than death. Daenerys suffers them at this very moment. The walls of Winterfell had ears. It started with the servants, then errant knights and squires bemoaning to the camp followers or lovers among the wildlings, Northwomen or Dothraki. Whispers and laments spread like wildfire, liquid flowing through the entire castle, through the entire Imperial camp, until it was ready to ignite in a massive conflagration. "The Emperor is dead! The Empress is one of them!" was the gist of it. No one denied the threat anymore. None among the soldiers groused how their lords led them from comfort of the south into the snows of winter to fight against something out of stories for the children. 50,000 men had seen the dead and lived to tell the tale. 65,000 that did not. The knights, cavalry and heavy infantry that remained at Winterfell. In the face of their grizzled comrades, not even them could deny it. An army of corpses and an undead dragon marched at the behest of ice monsters, bearing down upon them. And their revered emperor was dead. Their beloved empress among the enemy. By the evening of that day, clouds pitch black as the weak sun set below the horizon. The morale of the Imperial army had reached an all-time nadir. Line break. The servant rapped on the door, gingerly opening it when receiving no response. "Prince Aemon?" He stammered out, rather new in the palace, and his first day assigned to the Imperial quarters themselves. Seeing even the youngest and oldest members of the great Targaryen house put his nerves on edge. "You have a visitor," he croaked out. "Let her in," came the ancient voice, sharp yet faint with impending demise. The servant bowed, letting the visitor in before closing the door and scurrying away. "Ironic," stated the toothless maester. "I haven't been called prince in 7 decades. Yet the last time was in these very walls." Kinvara said nothing. Hands clasped atop the pleat of her skirts. Eyes flickering around the Spartan room. These were the Queen Cersei's quarters, no? Large enough for royalty, but small enough to house those considered less important. All knew Robert Baratheon's opinion on his wife. Aemon sat in a plush chair overlooking the city, upholstered with goose down and the finest of silks imported from Essos. The one luxury he afforded himself now that he resided in the Red Keep with his family, absolved of his duties as a maester by the imperial decree. The heavy burlap robes had been swapped for ones of red and black, his house colours. To him it was quite freeing. Aye, this was Prince Viserys's before him. And my nephew, Prince Duncan's as well. A history of mediocrity and madness, I am afraid. Still standing, the High Priestess of R'hllor did not know why she was summoned. With the tragedy at Last Hearth, the faithful among King's Landing were camped out in the tourney grounds every day to pray for the prince and princess promised. Normally, Kinvara would be delighted in the surge of converts. With the faith of the Seven permanently discredited due to its full-throated backing of Joffrey the vicious idiot, hundreds of thousands across the 7 kingdoms were abandoning the Seven, and either readopting the old gods of the forest, as their first ancestors did, or taking up the mantle of the Lord of Light. But considering the death and incapacity of their emperor and empress respectively, the priestess wasn't in the best of moods. "Why am I here, my prince?" she asked bluntly. "What do you know of Valyrian sorcery?" Aemon replied just as bluntly. Blinking, Kinvara opened her mouth, only for words to fail her. She hadn't imagined him saying that. What do you mean? Her voice, naturally high and quotacious, came out as a girlish squeak, making her seem far younger than she was. The eldest of all living Valyrians looked out over the city his ancestor built long ago. The founder of the true Valyrian culture was my ancestor, Soren Targaryen. You're Azor Ahai. Understanding the gravity of Aemon's tone, Kinvara grabbed a chair and pulled it next to him, taking a seat. The gods of old Valyria. It was said that they bestowed upon one man the power to bring the light to the world, to purge it of death and lead a rebirth. His eyes flickered to the High Priestess of King's Landing, the faith relocating from Volantis to here. The foundations of your faith, no? Yes, Kinvara said, but we dispense with the false gods. The Lord of Light is divinity manifest in human form, as is his chosen prince and princess. Aemon chuckled at that. Growing up a bastard. Jon would have loved to hear himself referred to as divinity manifest. The chuckle soon morphed into coughs as Aemon's system racked, only laid to rest when Kinvara fetched him a pitcher of water. My time is coming soon, Lady Kinvara. I have lived a full life. Seen my family torn apart, and then reborn. Watching it from all sidelines. It is time for that to come to an end. His dull, violet eyes shone bright with dragonfire. And what would you have me do? An ancient Valyrian ritual? Silent for several long moments, Aemon finally returned her a wan smile. Only death can pay for life. Line break. Torch stabbing into the darkness. The gold cloak peered over the crags of the pathway, eyes searching, squinting at the rocky face of Aegon's Hill as it jutted out into Blackwater Bay. Flickering fire managing to banish away the void, at least slightly. Vickers, you bleeding bastard! While the new ranks of the City Watch were drawn from loyal citizens of the city itself, or the various Essosi freedmen remaining from Joffrey's reign, their mannerisms were still of flea bottom and the bridge slums. What are you fucking doing? Thought I heard something. The first gold cloak responded. A scoff rang out. Think any fucker would come up there? Don't be a fucking idiot. Brows furrowing, Vickers shrugged. Yeah, probably right. Below, flat against the craggy walls, Arya let out a breath she hadn't realised she was holding. Gold cloaks weren't unsullied or Kingsguards, and far easier to avoid. Her Aunt Arya had only been happy to show the prince and princess the various corridors and tunnels through the very heart of the Red Keep. The further exploration inevitable for two determined dragons eager to escape their nursemaids and tutors for a romp at the beach underneath Aegon's high hill. Shifting that to a pathway along the western wall of the city was the next logical move. One Arya was resolute to hew to that night. Behind the walls of the Red Keep and the massive shadow of Aegon's pyramid, the gilded statue of the great Aegon the Conqueror and his sister wives Rhaenys and Visenya, now adorning the summit of Joffrey's eyesore, cast a great darkness upon the shoreline, but Arya could see well enough in the dark. And still she moved slowly. Praying to the old gods her father and aunt believed in that the cliff would melt into the beach south of the Iron Gate soon. One wrong step to the edge of the path, and Arya leapt back as a shower of pebbles and several larger stones careened down the cliff towards the water below. Heart nearly stopping as she flattened against the wall again, but no gold cloaks bothered this time. Skidooey the pisme, she muttered to herself under her breath. Her high Valyrian having taken her father's northern lilt rather than her mother's flowing form that Rhaegar preferred. Granted, the princess knew more curses in both Valyrian and the common tongue, thanks to the lack of self-control her father, aunt, and Sandor Clegane. But even she had limits. More vile profanity, just coating her tongue with shame. Her grandmother was rubbing off on her. As much as she loved her grandmother, Arya did not like it one bit. A proper princess minds her manners. Unlike her namesake, Arya did want to be a proper princess of House Targaryen, when needed, even if it got into her fun. At least she had her adventures with her brother,
though he couldn't be here. House Targaryen needed to live on, and Rhaegar was the future. To her relief, luck and her water dancing lessons with Aunt Arya allowed the princess to make it onto the beach without any further close calls or danger. The area was deserted, though she stuck to the shadows right underneath the face of the walls nonetheless. While the wolves closed the mud gate were still hustling and bustling in the dead of night, unloading grain and other foodstuffs from the New Valyria and the free cities to feed the city's population. The area close to the Iron Gate was sleepy, quiet. The population of artisans and middle-income merchants still all asleep. The guards at the gate were the greenest of the recruits, easy to slip past for the tiny girl trained by the famed Arya Stark Baratheon. Cloak tied around her body, silver hair pulled up into a messy bun, Arya glided and weaved through the trees and bushes, petite form nimble to sneak through the brambles. Her boots soon caked with mud, but she kept going, needing to find passage north, to do her part to save her parents from whatever evil had befallen them. They had cost her family so much pain. Ari? Arya nearly jumped out of her skin, tiny sword drawn and levelling at the threat, only for the dull blade to be batted away with a strong swipe of her forearm. In the darkness she could point to a hooded figure, face obscured but a pair of eyes glowing bright violet as clear as the moon. The violet eyes only one person the same size and build in King's Landing sported. Lycia? Pulling back the hood, Rhaegar's frown revealed their mother's best dragon scowl. Arya suddenly felt anger course through her. Seven hells, don't do that! The 8-year-old began thumping her twin. How did he get in front of me? Aunt Arya trained him too. The Crown Prince shielded himself as best he could. Gods, Arry, stop! But the princess was as wild as her namesake, relentless in her anger at her brother. I know you're trying to stop me, brother! Fists flew, trying her best to land blows somewhere not protected by his raised arms. One of us can't be stupid! Rhaegar shot back. Ow! A blow hit him on the shoulder. Stop it! No! Arya yelled. I'm a dragon wolf! The pack needs me! With a wolf snowl, she leapt at her brother. Rage and determination clouding her mind so thoroughly, she was willing to do anything to get to the north. Soon the twin Targaryens were rolling around in the grass north of the Iron Gate, backs thumping against trees, open palms and fists flying. Neither willing to give up, several bruises splotched on Rhaegar's skin, while Arya screamed as her silver locks, dead leaves and twigs tangled within, found them tugged. All culminating when the princess was pinned to the ground, her brother's hands and feet securing her in place. Yield! He commanded. Arya squirmed and writhed beneath him. Let me go, Lycia! She hissed, using the Valyrian word for brother rather than a nickname as he used for her. But her twin didn't relent. Please, let me go! Her writhing started to slacken, voice losing its edge as the seconds ticked by. Arya forced to confront her feelings without mask of rushing to escape the city. I can't! Rhaegar knew exactly what she would say, and his violets softened, feeling the same sorrow as his twin. He gently eased off her, pulling her into a hug. I'm not letting you go. Let me go, Lycia! She screamed, tears starting to prick her lids as she weakly hit against her brother's chest. Muna, Papa, need us! The sobs were uncontrollable now. Arya once more consumed with tears and sadness. So unlike the wild, free-spirited girl that loved to race around the Red Keep, pretending to be the great Queen Visenya. Rhaegar tightened his hold on his sister, one whom he had never been away from since they were in the womb, sharing a closer bond than anyone else, even to his parents. I know, Arry. He began to cry softly, feeling her resistance end and her arms finally wrap around him. I know. Moonlight shining through both gaps in the clouds and the dark canopy above, gentle snowfall cascading around them. Neither of the royal twins knew how long they stayed wrapped in each other's arms, free of all the encompassing pain that stabbed through their bodies for days. Instead, a dull pain, a torment, a longing deep within their souls at the loss of those that meant the most to them. Their mother, her silver hair and soft arms that comforted them since they had first taken breaths in the world. Their father,
his warm smile and total devotion that served as their role model even before the day in Dragonstone when they first laid eyes on him. Both lost, taken from the world by the Night King. And like any true Targaryen, be they 8 or 80, both burned with a desire to bring fire and blood to the gods themselves so that they could be in their parents' arms once more. We have to save them, Lykia. I want to, Ari. Rhaegar answered, their sobs starting to peter out, and all silent among the trees but the chirp of crickets. But what are we supposed to do? Arya pulled back at him, eyes red and bloodshot from crying, and cheeks stained with tears. What do you mean, Lykia? We need to go north. Shaking his head, Rhaegar was the spitting image of his father. The way he brooded and frowned despite the anguish clouding over him was exactly like the Emperor Jon Targaryen, though tending to act more like his mother in other respects. It was over a month since Muna and Papa left that we started to hurt. We need a boat to even get that quick. We don't have a boat, Ari. But... No matter how smart Arya was for her age, no matter how determined, the realization that nothing she could do hit her like a firing cannon. The tears returned. Papa's dead! Muna's dead! No matter how much Daenerys, and later Jon, tried to shelter the twins, still knew about death. From Dorea dying in front of them at Dragonstone, from how their grandmother was nearly killed by the faceless man before Podrick beheaded the assassin. Only now, the persons they grieved were their parents, the mighty Targaryen Emperor and Empress, riders of dragons and rulers of all they surveyed. Rhaegar sank next to his sister on the grass, fighting back his own sobs as he consoled her. As Arya had earlier, both twins broke apart in shock as the trees north of them fell and splintered, great trunks snapping as if they were mere twigs. Only 8 years apart from their birth, the Crown Prince and Princess's thoughts quickly jumped to the worst. Was the Night King here? Did he bring his giant dragon or some other undead monster? Was all hope lost? Both little forms trembled from terror, Arya burying her face in her brother's neck as Rhaegar straightened, ready to meet the threat as a proper prince of House Targaryen, as a proper lord of House Stark. His eyes widened as an orange head with 2 thin streaks of red poked through the closest clump of trees and bushes. Pushing off the ground and staring in wonder, Rhaegar approached the beast, head as high as he was. Sansenya? Sagging from fatigue, wishing she could just dive into the cool waters of the bay to soothe her muscles, Sansenya's eyes lit up at the familiar sight, the familiar smell of the Crown Prince. She trilled, neck craning forward to sniff at Rhaegar. Arya remained on the grass, speechless as she wiped her tears away, watching as her brother reached out to rub his palm on the dull orange scales of the great dragon, as had her parents' dragons when with them. So too did Sansenya nuzzle Rhaegar's hand. It's all right, girl, he said softly as the dragon began to rub the warm scales of her snout on Rhaegar's chest. What's wrong? He couldn't explain it, but he could feel the pain in her. Feel it as if it was his own. A loud screech, followed by another tree toppling to the ground, brought Arya leaping to her feet. Silver hair released from its bun, now flowing wildly in the wind, she ignored her brother's call and raced through the bushes, only to find a cream-grey dragon. Stained with dried blood, the beast was licking an ugly wound in his shoulder, causing Arya to gasp, feeling the dragon's pain just as her brother had Sansenya's. Lykia! It's Edaron! End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Oh my days, that was really hard. Oh my god. You can really feel it, can't you? Anyway, what's Aemon planning? And it's nice that Arya and Rhaegar have bonded to Sansenya and Edaron. That's nice. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit the bell to get notified if I never upload a new video. Have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Take care.